Everyone is mad at the necromancers. Look at this. Necro skeletons need more HP back. Necro skeletons have become useless. Poor necromancer. Keep scrolling. Necro minion build feels awful now. Well, necros suck now. Keep scrolling. Necro summon change. Necro is just sad. Ladies and gentlemen, necromancer is taking a lot of heat right now. If we actually go into the game, you're going to notice, I just roll the necromancer because I want to see how bad it is. And you're probably wondering where my skeletons are. They're dead. That's where they are. They're dead because they keep dying. The skeletons were pretty much heavily nerfed, so every time that you summon them, they're just about dead again. So the necromancers are experiencing somewhat what the druids did. They feel a little, how to put it, terrible. Now, while it's technically true that the Skeleton Mage Mastery and the Golem Mastery, as well as Bonded in Essence, as well as Death's Defense, all got a little bit of a buff at certain stages of points, the actual in-game mechanic when it comes to companions has changed. And it's not just for the Necromancer. I actually play Druid, and I noticed this on Druid as well. You see, in the game, I actually use the wolves. You can see here this dog is trying to fit in with my wolves. And the thing I use the wolves for is not only the offensive, but also the defensive properties of the fact that these are pseudo-tanks. In fact, in one of my previous Druid videos, How Good is Druid, I said this when talking about the potential of the companions. And you basically have this infinite tank. So, and you can see how much HP these guys have. It's ridiculous. Like, look how much damage I receive when they hit me. Okay, when I'm not in the immunity field, like, look, I receive a good chunk of damage. But then now look at the wolves. Look how much damage the wolves are receiving. And they've been tanking kind of this whole time. So you can start understanding very quickly that there's something weird about that mechanic. And here's the thing. At that time, that was actually 100% true. In fact, the companions would tank more or less anything. The necromancer minions would tank more or less anything. In fact, it was so overtuned the other way that it felt like anybody's minions were basically invincible. But now we have a very obvious problem. You can go and look at more or less any feedback that is around the necromancer HP when it comes to the skeletons here, and you're going to see every single person is complaining about it, and this person says that's what happens when you let people complain about level 25 necromancer. Necro was finding in game. They were about a right for survival. That might be fair. I mean, they might be talking about feedback like I did in that video where I said, man, it feels like they're basically invincible. And that type of feedback might be taken and then used to change the way companions or necromancer minions or any of that type of stuff works. But that is sort of the point of the beta. And to be honest, the minions did feel completely busted, and not just from HP-wise. Take a look at some of these clips. The AI alone was buggy and would ruin boss fights. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do. He's just freaking out. We got him blocked. We have him blocked. He's completely blocked. Oh my god. The damage is just... Yeah, he just gets stuck. He just gets stuck.
Yep.
So while I agree the early game doesn't feel quite right, we don't actually know what the end game is going to feel like for the Necromancer minions anymore. And to be honest, I never felt like any of it felt 100% correct. In fact, I felt like the minions and companions felt so ridiculously tanky that I was pointing it out in several videos. I mean, not just talking about the AI bug where you literally glitch entire bosses out. The minions just feel a little weird. Though I completely agree with feedback like this about taking reduced damage from AoE. There is nothing worse feeling than summoning all of your Necromancer minions and they all get one-shot by one just giant AoE that is completely undodgeable because you're not micromanaging the minions. They run around by themselves. And upon further inspection, even though they buffed some of these masteries, for instance like the Skeleton Mage, Golem, the Death's Defense is actually a nerf, so your minions cannot lose more than 60%/45% of their maximum life from a single damage instance. It used to be 25% at the maximum level, so the ability to have your minions stay alive at the end game with more points, and the mid game too, seems to be worse as well. It seems to me like they tried to fine-tune some of the Necromancer numbers, but then also just drop down basically all summons health, including the druids, whoever else is going to have a summon floating around when we get to whatever items in the game, etc. It seems like they just reduced your NPC pets level of HP, because the companion wolves are dying for me now as a druid. They are not near as tanky as they used to be. It was immediately noticeable for me. It's quite often I have 1 or 2 wolves dead. Now, I think there's a small portion of it that is somewhat related to this post, which is the loot feels better, because currently the legendary drop rate is way, way less than it was in the previous beta. Before, I believe, and this is off the top of my head, I think it was a 300% buff that we had in the previous beta. So we're effectively at a significantly lower drop rate in terms of legendary items, etc. So people's heroes just kind of in general are weaker earlier in the game. We're not all experiencing this increase of drop rate that's sort of artificially ramping us. So everyone across the board has less loot, and now the Necromancer has less HP on your minions as well. So I think it's incredibly obvious that the minions are dying all of the time. And if they're dying with the wolves, and the wolves seem to be extremely tanky when I had them, then they're definitely going to be dying with the skeletons. So it's probably going to happen to something like this early game where what you're doing is actually sacrificing your minions instead of using them as a minion build. You might be more of a caster type of Necromancer, but then come late game, I'm assuming they're going to have it balanced out where you can actually use the minions in the later game, which is a little bit unfortunate because I think a lot of people that play the Necromancer want to have that summon fantasy and want to have it from the beginning. So we're seeing some heavy pushback because Necromancer is a lot of people's favorite class, and one of the most, if not the biggest primary, Diablo related type of build is a summon based Necromancer. It doesn't matter what game we're talking about in Diablo, that's something people love to see. So I think we're getting some volatility in terms of feedback. If you go to the Reddit right now, I mean, there's 30 of these posts and they're all the top posts. I mean, the entire Reddit is literally just flooded with complaints about the Necromancer. We saw memes when it came to the Druid and the 17 damage and all that, but it is those discussion points about Druid were like 1 to 10 how much feedback we're seeing about the Druid right now. It is very volatile. And while I haven't experienced them doing no damage, this guy is right on point with what I've experienced with the wolves feeling like paper. So I guess I'm just very curious to see exactly how they change the summons in your pets type of system, because it does seem like there were some pretty significant changes to the overall HP of minions, which might actually be fair, to be honest, as I don't know if they want people cheesing it with like some of the clips I've shown you in this video. But whatever they've done with the Necromancer minions early game is obviously too much and overtuned. And at the moment, everyone hates it. And they said they went gold and that they're not going to do any more changes. So maybe this is a day 1 patch or something like that. But as it stands right now, everybody hates the Necromancer. But what is your take on it? Do you have a hot take? Do the minions need to be nerfed? Did they go too far? Are the Druid minions buffed too much in terms of damage, but they're too paper thin, as some people put it? What is your opinion when it comes to the minions? If you're asking Reddit and everybody I've talked to, everyone's angry for sure about this minion change, but I am curious to see what it comes like in-game, because they did do some changes and some factual buffs to things like the mages and golems, so I'm wondering if it's just the skeleton warriors are a little bit weaker early game, and as we get into mid and late game, the caster Necromancer falls off, and we get more of a summon-based Necromancer that starts to stick out a little bit. We don't know. We can only get to level 20 currently, but consider subscribing if you are new to the channel, and as the information comes out, we will figure it out together.